From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of amazing ideas and stunning digital marketing. In today's podcast, we have Copywriting with Todd Jones, and Todd's going to talk about differentiation. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Hey everybody, Stunning Digital Marketing is your digital concierge. We help you put the pieces together to make your marketing success. Specialties we have including WordPress design and development, WordPress security, which is one of our most popular offerings, ads, and more. So if you want to succeed in the digital world, go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and have a look at what we offer, and we'd be glad to help you. And let's jump on a call and make it happen. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And in today's podcast, we have our Copywriting with Todd Jones segment. Hey Todd, how you doing?
I am trying to stay warm. We got a cold January this year.
Good, keep it. I don't want it here. But today we thought, along with staying warm, we'd talk about differentiation. So what does that mean to you?
Well, okay, let's go back to my unique value proposition, the 4 questions I asked, and there's a bonus question I asked too, but the 4 is, who am I? What do I do? How do I do it? Or who am I? What do I do? Who do I do it for? And then how do I do it differently? That is where differentiation comes to me. So for a company, a service company, so when you dig into differentiation, particularly the B2B world, you tend to get people who are really, I should say, people listening to this may not, but I do. I hear a lot of B2B SaaS differentiation. You get it from there's a lady, I'm drawing blank on her name right now. She obviously different. She's a very sharp lady, and right now I'm drawing a blank on her name. But anyway, Amanda. Anyway, she's got a book called Obviously Different, which is a kind of the hallmark of SaaS, B2B SaaS differentiation. Very good book. I would recommend it. But the problem with product companies is that most people that are listening to this podcast in our circle are service businesses. Yep. And I don't find a whole lot about service businesses, except that you always recommend that book by Robert Bloom.
You beat me to it.
The Inside Advantage. So, yeah. Well, that's okay. I was thinking about it this morning whenever I was getting ready for this podcast. I was thinking about that book. He does talk about, and there's all these, I have heard, Rob, probably a dozen different ways to say this. And it is the inside advantage. It's a secret sauce. I've heard secret sauce. These types of phrases that we come up with. What is your unique advantage? What is your secret sauce? What is what is it makes you different? People have a number of different ways to say that. But basically, it's how you do what you do differently. What is it that you do differently? Now, when you're a service business, and this is true with any business, but when you're a service business, let's just take web designer there's some web designers that listen to this podcast. Let's take web designer. There are thousands of web designers. And if you're in a metropolitan area, there's probably hundreds. Okay. So you are one of many. Yeah. Now, when we talk about narrowing that down, we talk about, okay, what kind of web designer are you? I do websites for people who are vendors in the wedding industry. Okay, there's one type of web designer. I design course websites for course creators. Okay, that's another one. There's all these different niches, we call them niches. You may niche in a particular part of the skill. We know, of course, you and I, a lot of people who have really niched into the web care industry, which you call it security.
I've niched even more. I've gone right
Yeah.
into security, not general web care.
Well, even in that is web care though. That in
Yep.
my way, we may have a different opinion on that, but that's web care.
Yep.
Ryan has done web care. Now, does that mean you don't build websites? No, of course you do. But your major thing is but this is we're continuing to narrow the scope down. You get into a spot where you have a target audience. Now, how do you differentiate yourself from other people like you in the same target audience? This is where differentiation comes into play. And I started thinking about this a while back because like if you're gonna you can do differentiation a lot of different ways, and your SaaS software companies and your product companies, they have various ways they differentiate. But I'm like, what is it about a service business? How can they differentiate? So I put my brain to work. Once in a blue moon, I do that, and
Mhm.
I created a list. And I don't know that it's exhaustive. I don't think it's too exhaustive, but it's a number of different things. And I think there's one I added after you got the show notes, but that's okay because it's low value, and you'll see what I'm talking about when I get to it. But let's talk about these.
Story.
How can you differentiate yourself? Story is one of the first ones. And that is actually, if you've got no other way to differentiate yourself and you're maybe new as a service provider, your story can be your differentiator. Now, we've already talked about on this podcast about an origin story. I talk about there's one story that I call a pivot story. That's when a company pivots
Same idea.
one thing they offer and they pivot. But anyway, an origin story, whatever you want to call it. There's a founder story and an origin story. Kind of the same thing. If you're a bigger company, you probably have one founder. Like for instance, last episode I mentioned Walmart. Okay, the founder is Sam Walton. Anybody you probably read his book. Sam Walton's the founder. So if you go to Walmart, but there's going to be crossover, right? The founder story and the origin story are going to be very similar and maybe the same. In some cases, in a business, it is the same, but it is something. I experienced this a lot when I wrote articles about startups working for Talk Business and Politics. Um, you would go to a startup conference of some kind, and people would do their pitches. And you get it if you watch Shark Tank. You get it when you watch Shark Tank. We had this problem, and I searched for a solution. I couldn't find a solution. I couldn't find one that was satisfactory. So I decided to do it myself.
Yep.
I mean, it's a very basic story, but those always work better than almost any other pitch you can show. That's because in general, your story is usually something similar to that, and people are interested in that. Why is Rob so into website security? Well, there's a few events you can go back to and point to where you saw how important security was and you got passionate about it.
Yep.
I think that's the same for many of us in the WordPress space that do web care. But you see it. It's always interesting. Those stories are always interesting. They allow us to connect with the service provider a little bit easier and builds that know, like, and trust factor that we talk
Mhm.
about having. So that story is the first. None of these are, you don't have to have all of these. And so you may have one of these things that I'm
Yep.
mentioning, and the story is the first one. The second one is process. Um, I don't have a good example right now, unfortunately, but anytime somebody brands a process, our unique patented process, you might hear that sometimes.
McDonald's, how they make hamburgers. Yeah, that's all.
Yes, that's a great one. Ray Kroc, he went to town on they
Mhm.
used the whole. Actually, I think that predates Ray Kroc,
And
but
if you want to go watch the Ray Kroc story, there's a movie on Netflix called The Founder, and there's a book
it's a good
entitled
story,
same thing.
good
Yeah, it's a
book.
great story.
That actually predates him because I think it was the original brothers, and one of them had a
McDonald's.
manufacturing experience that he brought that to the burger making process.
Yep.
So they did that so they could get them out faster. Now, I would argue David's Burgers in Central Arkansas is 10 times better than McDonald's, but that's another story for another day.
That's a
Uh,
market. That's a bit of a marketing game too, though, to some degree. Like it's hard. It's easier for a company like McDonald's to market more than a smaller.
oh, sure, yeah. I would say well, for David's Burgers, there's one is the quality of their food, but also the service. When you go in there, they just almost fall over themselves trying to
Which,
take care of
which
you.
leads you into your next point called service differential. So there you go.
Yeah, service difference. Yeah, that is a good one. So I did a story a few years ago when I was with Talk Business and Politics, and this is really a productized service. It's called the Schlep app. The guys that started it, one of them is from Arkansas, so that's how it got on my radar. And so he's telling me the story and how it all works and all this kind of stuff. And he says, and so on the app, when we make the arrangements, so what they do is in the big cities, um, delivery for smaller boutique furniture stores are difficult because most of them don't have trucks and deliveries.
Yep.
And so, like he said, in Arkansas or almost any rural area in this state, or probably even Canada for that matter, there's a lot of people who have trucks or SUVs or vans, and your neighbor. And so, in fact, the first original tagline was "Your neighbor with a truck" or something like that.
Yeah.
But so it was basically Uber for boutique furniture delivery. So you go through the app, you say, I just bought armoire, I'm making something up. I just bought a desk or table for end table down at the furniture store in the city. So I live in Chicago or Indianapolis or whatever. And you schedule a pickup. And so they use gig workers to do this, right?
Yep.
And but one of the questions they ask them, and this is an example of service differentiation, and they didn't have too much competition, but um, how do you like your coffee? And they brought them a cup of coffee. I don't remember where they got it from, if they went to Starbucks or what, but they brought them, when they brought their delivery, they also handed them a cup of coffee the way they requested it.
Yep.
And so I thought it was pretty cool. It's a very good example that pops in my head about service. I think Zappos was really good about doing customer service for online.
That's where they
Yep.
made their name. To some
And
degree.
certainly your local restaurant. Well, I always like to talk about Round Mountain Coffee, my favorite coffee shop in town. I walk in, they know my name. Hey, Todd, you want a drip today? You want a pour over? They know so much about me, my behaviors, just from me coming in. The service is exquisite. Clearly the product is exquisite too, but I sit down and talk to Austin this morning about college basketball.
Yep.
I could talk to him about wrestling sometimes, or they talk about what they like to talk about. But they're very good about talking about what we want to talk about. He puts that in his hiring because he told me, he said, I want to make sure that my barista staff can talk about it. They don't have to like it or love it, but they got to be able to communicate with the customers.
I get
And
that.
so it's a very good service. So you can't get that at Starbucks, especially nowadays for whatever reason. So
Expertise.
expertise and reputation kind of go hand in hand. But especially if you're like a solo service provider, I think I added some notes but so conversion copywriting, a lot of people will point to Joanna Weeb, who is from Canada. I call her the conversion copywriting queen. Email copywriting, there's a lot of people point to, but Ben Settle is somebody that I think about. A lot of people talk about direct response copywriting, Dan Kennedy. These are people who have been recognized for having expertise in the things they do. So web security, Oliver Sid, Kathy Zant, Rob Cairns,
Yep.
in that community, they know that these people are experts in their field, and it comes with. It's not something you develop overnight, right? You've got to have proved it over and over and over again, and it's to a point where people start saying, "Yeah, man, if you want to secure your enterprise website, you need to talk to Rob Cairns." If you need to learn how to write story-driven emails, you need to read Ben Settle. this kind of thing.
Agreed.
There's a lot of people who are experts at it. They become recognized. You can't really manufacture that. It just happens organically. Reputation is very similar to that. But if you think about it from a company level, as opposed to a singular person, so I'm trying to somebody in Canada that would have Tim Hortons maybe a reputation for being a good coffee shop, but even goes beyond that. Like, okay, go back to the last episode we had. You talked about your jewelry store, and in the local Facebook group, they get praise. Well, that comes one with expertise, but two, they have developed a reputation for quality service and products, and that reputation precedes them, and they are constantly recommended, which of course is a powerful word of mouth, right? So that is reputation. Reputation is more, in the way I'm looking at it, if you want to, is it's more of a company level than a personal level.
Yep. So the next one you say premium pricing, but I would also argue and say non-premium pricing as well.
That's the one I added after I sent you the notes. And
pricing as a whole, really.
Yeah, pricing is a differentiation. You can either price really high and or really low. I don't recommend, especially as a service provider, being on the low end. That's going to cost you in the long run.
The
Now,
only time low pricing works is discount stores and dollar stores.
I was going to say, and I brought up Sam Walton many times in Walmart. That's how they started, by undercutting the competition. When I was a kid and growing up in the 70s and 80s in America, we had other discount stores. There was Kmart, Gibson's, and Magic Mart. All these were things our town had.
Local.
Huh?
Did you guys have local stores, or was that
I don't recall that one. But the other three were right there with them. And guess what? None of them are left.
No,
but Walmart's still standing.
Canada had Buy One Day. We had even in Toronto, Ed Mervis, the big theater king, had a store, made his money on a store called Honest Ed's, and it's gone. It's
Honest Ed's, yeah. So but I don't recommend, especially in the service business, trying to win on the lowest price. You will probably bankrupt yourself doing that. So, but it is difficult and a hard mentality to gather to become the premium pricing at something. I did hear a story a long time ago, and I wish I could find the source of this, but I can't. I'll tell this story. Okay, it's a story. Your readers will probably roll their eyes, but here's another story. She was a photographer, and she was kind of looking to get out of it, and she got a bid for a wedding to do, and because she wasn't really gung-ho on doing it, she priced it way high out of the market.
I have done that before.
They took it.
I know.
They took it. And then word spread that she was the premium photographer for weddings. And suddenly people were paying to fly her to exotic locations to do the high-end weddings. And would that be cool? I mean, but what a fantastic story for becoming the premium. Don't differentiate on pricing as a service provider unless you can do the premium. And you probably better have the expertise and reputation to go along with it. But do not, as a service business, go with the low end pricing, which is another differentiation that I don't recommend.
Yep.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The last, but certainly not least, is type of audience and common denominators.
Yeah, this goes back to the niche audience thing. And you can really get niche with an audience. But I'm people, when they start doing an audience and niching down, they tend to go demographic, and sometimes that works. It's really good for B2C businesses, not always so much for B2B. What you want to do, and I say common denominators because a lot of times I think, and this is just me pulling a number out of my head, I don't have any verification to back it up, but I think it takes probably about 10 years for somebody in the service business to really figure out what their target audience is most of the time. And at that point, you can look back and see the common denominators. These are the people I like working with. These are the people I have a good relationship working with. And our friend Ryan has been developing that lately. He's cut off some people that weren't good for him,
Me too.
and tighten that niche in a little bit for him. It comes back to common denominators, but sometimes it is niche based. Industry, people tend to use industry for niche. But let's take the example of our friend who was a wedding photographer. She niched down to weddings, but even more than that, it was weddings that were high-end, expensive weddings. Like we're flying you to Bermuda or Hawaii or some exotic location. These are not the average weddings by the average family. These are probably weddings by the richest of the richest. That is an incredibly tight niche. But you look for as a service provider, you look for the common denominators, especially if you're struggling to figure out really who your target. Like me, I struggle with that quite a bit because I like a lot of different things. But I've began to figure out like who I like working with best, and I'm trying to put my foot in that direction. So
that kind of gives it. We've talked a little bit about differentiation. I hope that helps some people. Todd, thank you so much, as always. Copyflight.com to find out about you. You're on most of the socials, including Blue Sky now, believe it or not, right?
Not very active there, but I am on Blue Sky, yes.
Certainly LinkedIn and X, probably the best two places to get you, I would think. And have a wonderful day, my friend. Be well. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for listening to the SDM Show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital concierge. For all your digital marketing needs, especially WordPress security, jump on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and let's help you put the pieces together and make your business succeed in the marketing realm. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. A very special thank you to Todd Jones for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I love you. I miss you very much. And thanks for all the inspiration over the years and your caring, your understanding, and helping me grow as an individual. Thank you, Dad.